For more than 4,500 years, the Great Pyramid of Giza has been treated like a stone riddle. People stare at it and ask the same question again and again. Who really built this impossible monument? Some say slaves, some say aliens, some say a lost civilization disappeared and left no trace. But the strangest part is this. The real answer was not hidden inside a secret chamber. It was not buried under the Sphinx. It was not written on a golden tablet. The real answer was hiding in something far more ordinary. A torn, fragile work diary written by a man almost nobody had heard of. His name was Merer. He was not a king. He was not a priest. He was not a famous architect. He was an inspector, a middle-ranking official, the kind of man history usually forgets. But in 2013, near the Red Sea, archaeologists found pieces of papyrus that brought his voice back from the dead. And those broken pages revealed something most people were never taught in school. The Great Pyramid was not just a mysterious pile of giant stones. It was the center of a massive ancient supply chain, controlled by workers, boats, harbors, canals, officials, food systems, and government records. This is the hidden story of the Great Pyramid, not hidden because one secret group locked it away, but hidden because the truth was too ordinary for movies, too detailed for simple myths, and too human for people who wanted the pyramid to be impossible. Most people imagine the pyramid rising from the desert, surrounded by endless sand, but that image is misleading. In Khufu's time, Giza was not just a lonely desert plateau. It was connected to a living river system. The Nile was the highway of ancient Egypt, and during flood seasons, water could bring heavy materials much closer to the construction site than most people imagine. What looks impossible on dry sand becomes very different when you realize that ancient Egyptians were not dragging every stone across a dead desert for miles. They were using water like an ancient industrial road. And this is where Merer's diary becomes so important. His papyrus was found at Wadi El Jarf, an ancient harbor on the Red Sea coast. Think about that for a moment. One of the most important documents about the Great Pyramid was not found at the pyramid itself. It was found far away, at a harbor by the sea. That alone feels like a twist in a movie. The answer to the pyramid mystery was not sitting in Giza. It was waiting in the remains of an ancient port, inside storage galleries carved into desert rock. When the papyrus fragments were studied, scholars realized they were looking at some of the oldest written documents ever found in Egypt. These were not stories written hundreds of years later. They came from the time of Pharaoh Khufu himself, the same king connected to the Great Pyramid. And among those fragments was the daily log of Inspector Merer and his crew. But Merer did not write like someone trying to impress future generations. He did not say, "Today we built the greatest wonder on earth." He did not describe gods coming down from the sky. He did not record magic machines or unknown technology. Instead, he wrote about work. He wrote about loading stone. He wrote about traveling by boat. He wrote about stopping at harbors. He wrote about food, movement, and officials. And that is exactly why his diary is so powerful. Because real history often does not sound like a legend. It sounds like paperwork. The most shocking thing about the diary of Merer is how normal it feels. It is not trying to prove anything. It is not trying to defend the Egyptians. It is not trying to attack alien theories. It simply records what a working crew was doing day after day. And in those simple notes, the pyramid suddenly becomes less like a supernatural mystery and more like a massive, organized project. Merer's crew was moving fine limestone from the Tura quarries. Tura limestone was not just any stone. It was high-quality white limestone, the kind used for the smooth outer casing of the Great Pyramid. Today, the pyramid looks rough, brown, and ancient because much of that casing is gone. But when it was new, the Great Pyramid would have been covered in polished white stone. Under the Egyptian sun, it may have looked almost blinding, like a mountain of light rising above the Nile Valley. This is one of the hidden details most people never hear. The Great Pyramid we see today is not the Great Pyramid Khufu's people saw. We see the skeleton, they saw the shining skin. We see a damaged monument, they saw a glowing royal machine built for eternity. And Merer's diary connects directly to that lost, shining surface. His crew transported limestone from Tura toward Khufu's pyramid complex, known in ancient Egyptian as Akhet Khufu, the horizon of Khufu. That name appears in the ancient records. It is not a modern guess. It is not a tourist label. It is a name from the time of the builders themselves. This means Merer was not just moving random stone. He was part of the final stage supply system for the king's pyramid. He was helping deliver the material that made the monument shine. Now imagine the scene. Before sunrise, men gather near the quarry. The air is cool, but everyone knows the heat is coming. Blocks of pale limestone are prepared. Ropes are tightened. Workers shout commands. Boats wait in the water, heavy and low, ready to carry stone. Mara watches the loading, checks the crew, follows orders, and records the movement. Then the boat pushes away. It moves through ancient waterways that no longer exist in the same form today. The crew stops at controlled points, passes through harbor zones, unloads supplies, receives food, and continues toward Khufu's project. This is not a fantasy. This is the hidden machine behind the pyramid. Most people think the pyramid mystery is about one question. How did they lift the stones? That question matters, but it is not the whole story. The bigger hidden question is, how did they organize everything? How did they feed thousands of workers? How did they move stone from quarries? How did they manage boats, ropes, tools, timber, copper, food, water, and labor? How did one kingdom turn an idea in a king's mind into a mountain of stone? The answer is not one secret device. The answer is a system. The Great Pyramid was not built by one genius alone. It was not built by one miracle. It was built by a civilization that knew how to control labor, time, water, stone, and belief. The real secret technology was not alien metal. It was administration. It was planning. It was record-keeping. It was the ability to take thousands of ordinary actions and aim them toward one impossible goal. That is what people miss. The hidden story is not that aliens built the pyramid. The hidden story is that humans were far more organized than we give them credit for. Near Giza, archaeologists also found evidence of a huge workers' settlement. This place is sometimes called the lost city of the pyramid builders. It was not a random camp. It had bakeries, storage areas, administrative spaces, and signs of a workforce being supplied on a massive scale. There were people baking bread, brewing beer, preparing food, managing goods, and supporting the crews. This is important because it destroys the simple Hollywood image of endless slaves being whipped across the desert with no structure and no care. The work was hard, brutal even. These people were not living easy lives. Their bodies paid the price, but they were not imaginary. They were not faceless. They were not a helpless crowd in a movie scene. They were organized crews working inside a powerful state system, and Merer's diary gives us the missing human voice. For centuries, the Great Pyramid was discussed through kings and myths. Khufu got the name. The monument got the fame. Later writers created stories. Modern people created theories. But the ordinary workers disappeared. Their hands were everywhere, but their names were almost nowhere. Then a torn papyrus appeared, and suddenly one of those forgotten people stepped back into history. Merer was not telling us, "I am important." He was simply doing his job. But because his job was connected to the pyramid, his daily notes became a time machine. One of the most fascinating details is that the diary mentions high-level officials connected to Khufu's administration. This shows that the pyramid project had supervision from the top of the state. The workers were not acting randomly. The boats were not moving without purpose. The stone supply was not a loose village effort. It was a royal operation. Every journey had meaning because it served the king's eternal monument, and this is why the alien idea loses power when you look at the evidence closely. If aliens built the Great Pyramid, why do we find Egyptian records of Egyptian crews moving Egyptian stone to Khufu's pyramid? Why do we find ancient harbors? Why do we find quarries? Why do we find worker towns? Why do we find food systems? Why do we find officials, scribes, and transportation routes? The alien theory sounds exciting because it jumps over the hard parts, but the evidence does not jump. It walks step by step, like a worker carrying a rope, like a boat pushing through water, like a scribe marking another day of labor. The truth is slower, but stronger. The pyramid was not built in a single unbelievable moment. It was built through repetition. Load the stone, move the boat, feed the crew, record the journey, return to the quarry, load again, sail again, stop again, deliver again. Repeat this not once, not 10 times, but thousands of times across years. That is how humans build things that later generations call impossible. And maybe that is the real reason so many people prefer alien stories. Aliens make the pyramid easy. Humans make it uncomfortable. Because if humans built it, then we have to admit that ancient people were not simple, foolish, or primitive. We have to admit they were intelligent, disciplined, spiritual, and technically skilled. We have to admit that a civilization without modern engines could still organize a project so large that it still dominates the imagination 4,500 years later. The Great Pyramid was not just stone. It was society turned into architecture. Every block represented more than weight. It represented a quarry worker who cut it, a boatman who moved it, a rope maker who prepared the lines, a carpenter who maintained boats and sledges, a cook who fed the crew, a scribe who recorded movement, an overseer who gave orders, and a ruler whose power demanded the work. When you look at the pyramid this way, it becomes even more amazing. Not because it was less human, but because it was more human than we ever realized. There is also another hidden layer. The script on Merer's papyrus was not the famous carved hieroglyphs most people imagine. It was written in hieratic, a faster cursive form of Egyptian writing used for administration. That detail matters because it shows the difference between public monument and private paperwork. Hieroglyphs were carved for eternity. Hieratic was used for daily business. The pyramid's real secret was not only carved in stone, it was scribbled in working documents. That makes the discovery feel almost accidental. The Great Pyramid survived because it was enormous. Merer's papyrus survived because it was lucky. Thin pieces of writing material, buried for thousands of years, could have disappeared forever. If they had rotted, burned, or been destroyed, we would have lost one of the clearest voices from the Pyramid Age. The world would still argue about the builders, while Merer's testimony would be gone. But it survived. And because it survived, we can now see the pyramid from a different angle. Not from the tourist viewpoint, not from the conspiracy viewpoint, not from the pharaoh's throne. We see it from the supply line, from the harbor, from the boat, from the quarry, from the diary of a man doing his duty. This is the hidden history most people never hear. The Great Pyramid was not only built upward, it was built sideways through networks stretching across Egypt. Stone came from quarries, supplies came from farms, men came from communities, orders came from officials, records moved through scribes, boats passed through waterways. The pyramid was the visible tip of an invisible system. And the most mysterious thing is that the system worked. Without trucks, without computers, without diesel engines, without modern cranes, ancient Egypt created a project so precise and so massive that people today still search for impossible explanations. But maybe the real impossible thing is not the pyramid itself. Maybe the real impossible thing is our refusal to believe ancient humans could do it. The Diary of Merer does not answer every detail. It does not tell us exactly what ramp shape was used. It does not explain every lifting method. It does not give us a full construction manual. But it gives us something more powerful than a manual. It gives us proof of the living world around the pyramid. The workers, the boats, the stone, the harbors, the officials, the schedule. It shows that the Great Pyramid was not a lonely miracle. It was the result of a kingdom operating at full force. So when people ask, who really built the Great Pyramid? The answer is not just the Egyptians. That is true, but it is too simple. The real answer is, it was built by a hidden world of laborers, boatmen, quarry crews, food suppliers, scribes, engineers, and officials whose names were mostly erased by time. It was built by people like Merer, people who did not become statues, did not wear crowns, and did not expect anyone to remember them. But their work remained. The stones remained. And finally, their records returned. That is the most powerful twist in the story. For thousands of years, the pyramid was silent, and people filled that silence with myths. They imagined aliens, giants, lost machines, and impossible secrets. But when the oldest paperwork from the Pyramid Age finally spoke, it did not tell a story of creatures from the stars. It told a story of men on boats hauling limestone under the authority of Khufu. And somehow, that is even more haunting, because it means the Great Pyramid is not proof that humans needed help from another world. It is proof that we forgot the greatness of our own world. We forgot the workers. We forgot the river. We forgot the harbors. We forgot the administrators. We forgot the ordinary men whose daily labor created something immortal. Merer's diary is not just a document. It is a message from the people history almost buried. It says, we were here. We moved the stone. We followed the river. We served the horizon of Khufu. And long after kings, theories, and empires turned to dust, our work still stands. The Great Pyramid is not a mystery because humans could not build it. It is a mystery because humans did build it. And then, For thousands of years, we forgot how powerful they truly were.